Players Irons, Tony. The test is out.
And then our winner, and again, we'll talk about how we got there, or really where it stood out. But number
Yep.
one overall.
What is up, everybody? How you living? No putts given. It's almost the end of June. Tony?
Tired.
Yeah, really? Why is that?
I don't know, man. I think that June stat just knocked the life out of me.
Yeah?
It is almost the end of June, isn't it?
I know. Here we go. Before we forget, find us, follow us, subscribe to the channel. Add us to your daily or weekly listening routines. We would appreciate it. That would be super fun. Also, thank you to Lab Golf for once again sponsoring this particular episode of No Putts Given. Lab Golf. We got to talk a little bit of tour recap stuff, but we also, big topic today, people, Players Irons testing results. All of you players and wannabe players and people who think you might be players, iron testing results are out. We're going to dive in pretty deep on some of that stuff. But before we get to that, tour recap time. Should we just quit the rest of the year? Give every award to Scotty Scheffler?
My goodness. I mean, it's been insane.
I think
it was 6 wins, the first time since Tiger in what year was that?
2009.
I feel like that was a while ago.
15 years. We'll give it a decade and a half, roughly.
It's older than my kid. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point now in the Scotty Scheffler saga that we can't just say, hey, he has this many wins or he's made this much money. We have to start to provide some additional context. And I think that's when you know something has gone from, noteworthy within that year to potentially, broaching that world of historical importance. Like you said, 6 wins in a season, most since Tiger 2009. 6 wins before July. Hasn't been done since 1962 with Arnold Palmer.
Yeah. The year is not over yet. That's the thing. We still got a little bit of time left.
Well, let's say he legitimately has another, call it 4 to 5 starts plus the Olympics. We got one more major. I doubt he plays Scottish Open, but let's say you got a major, 3 playoff events. Maybe there's a 5th event in there, but I'm kind of seeing 4. How many of those 4 can he realistically win? Like, if you were betting, let's give you $100 at Vegas, and let's put the over/under at 1.5. You're gonna bet
I take the over. I think I take the over right now.
You take 2 of the 4.
At some point, you're like, it seems like he shouldn't be able to continue this, but I mean, the only blips really, right? Valhalla, clearly a little bit of a blip there.
And I blame an $80 pair of pants for that primarily, but yeah.
I mean, and then at the U.S. Open, wasn't really ever a factor.
Things that should be getting more credit or notice within that as well. Just pulled a couple numbers here. And again, these are rough estimates. We don't know exactly how much Ted Scott gets paid. Again, Ted Scott is
unreal.
Scotty Scheffler's caddy.
So unreal.
We don't really discuss caddy pay very often. And, there's typical structures, right? You get 10% for a win. Let's say 5% for a top 10. These type of things. So we're using a little bit of guesstimating on the math part. But I'm going to go ahead and put Ted Scott as roughly $2.6 million earned so far this year. If so, and I think that's a fair estimate, if so, that would put him in the top 50 on the PGA Tour money list, roughly 46th. He'd be ahead of people like Ricky Fowler and Jordan Spieth, kind of right neck and neck with Victor Hovland.
Average. I mean, at some point, right? Does a marginal PGA player, somebody who's struggling for the last couple of years, just try and give Ted Scott the Galooly and see about taking that spot over.
The old Jeff Galooly, Tony Harding, Nancy Kerrigan reference. I pleased to see you work that one in.
Average good Galooly.
Average PGA Tour right now this year's about $1.55 million earned. So he's more than $1 million ahead of average PGA Tour play. So you think about keeping your status. I mean, right now, again, just on money alone, Ted Scott is qualifying for things like the signature events next year. He is.
I think they should let him play. Let him play.
Everything. I mean, that's crazy. And because we like to talk equipment, really the only notable equipment switch in Scheffler's bag, called over the last, year and a half or whatever, really what precipitated this run is
Spider Mallet.
A mallet putter. Specifically, TaylorMade Spider.
Some form of spider. I don't know the exact model, but one of the spidery ones.
Yeah, so I mean, for all
I don't think it's red. Remember when that was the thing? Like when everybody's like, let's just make red putters for 2 years, and honestly,
that was like the Callaway TaylorMade back and forth. You made it red, now
so
we'll make
absurd.
a red one. Now that was the whole Jason Day world of red mallet putter.
Yeah.
I mean, should that be getting more credit though? I mean, think about how historic. I mean, Tiger and his Scotty Cameron, right? Oh my word. Should we be talking about Scheffler that same way with
Scotty
this
and his spider?
Scotty Spider?
Maybe. I mean, if you want to point to a single thing, and it's probably almost never ever a single thing, but
right,
kind of timeline, draw a line. This is what happened. Yeah, and we talk about multiple times on this show. Scotty as an average putter is good enough because of the rest of his game.
Right, because he's...
And if he ever became an above-average putter or, God forbid, a great putter, I mean, I don't know.
Why show up? I mean, that's when you start...
That would be, that's good enough to beat Taylor Gooch every week, I'm telling you.
I have to check.
If you want
see if there's any
erase the asterisk from all of this.
Yeah, I mean, $30 million almost earned this year. I mean, again, whatever, $27.7 million. He's encroaching on $28 million earned on course. Mallet putter. If I'm TaylorMade, I'm making a bigger deal of that. Anyway, Amy Yang, 75 majors.
1 for 76.
She's 1 for 75, I guess now. Yeah. So think about this though: 21 top 10s in her previous 74 majors.
Was it 74 or 75? Was this 75 or 76?
I don't know. It's right in there. I think it's 75. I think she's 1 for 75. You can double check me. I don't know. It's close to that. But she won the women's PGA at Sahalee Country Club in the Pacific Northwest. She's a PGA pro. Obviously has been since about the age of 17. She's 34 years old. I think the coolest part of this, you saw how many players waited for her on the 18th, behind the 18th green. You don't see, you'll see a friend and this, that, whatever, but you don't see a collection of your competitors hanging out. Maybe the group you played, maybe the group ahead of you can, whatever. But there was a group of her competitors that knew, again, so close, so many times. So for her to break through, arguably one of the more popular LPGA Tour victories here in the last, certainly in the last handful of majors.
So you are correct. It was number 75.
Was it 75?
So 1 for 7. It was. You were right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's... I think after 75 tries, she probably knows everybody.
Yeah, that's also fair. Before we get into our equipment stuff, quick question for you, Tony.
Yeah.
Should Bryson be on the Olympic team? The
yes.
U.S. Olympic team?
Yes. It should be Bryson and Scotty, period, hard stop. I can't...
All right, you get 3, right? You get 3 players on the team.
Okay, yeah, then give me Xander, I think.
Let's just say it's 3. We get 3, maybe 4, whatever it is.
I would go just picking, take all criteria off the table, other than what I think for a change. Yeah, then it's Scotty, it's Bryson, and it's Xander Schauffele.
Scotty, Bryson, Xander Schauffele. It's the world according to Tony. I love your top 3. Again, I agree. You can go 1 and 2 in any order. I'm going 1 Scotty Scheffler, 2 Bryson, X-Man Xander. I love that. 4th, if it's a wild card, just kind of depending on, could be recent form a little bit. You could play into, a couple other things.
by the numbers, it's Wyndham Clark, right?
Yeah, but
I
want to go.
It does kind of feel like I feel like I'm not saying this is fact,
Right.
but I feel like I haven't seen him near the top of the leaderboard in a while.
Yeah, I can't put Wyndham fourth, right now, today. I think we agree on those. But absolutely should be on there. It's a travesty that he.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I get we're talking professional tournaments and ranking points and all of that stuff, but
Right.
I just feel like, and again, I understand the Olympics. This is their established criteria as well.
Right.
But I just think at some point you have to go, in this particular case where we're not talking about professional tournaments and qualifications for majors within the professional golf scene, if you will. Like, this is the Olympics. It's a separate thing.
Yep.
And at some point, common sense should just kick in and go,
Yep.
How do we not have Bryson on the Olympic team?
Right. Can we not all just look and agree, like, hey, this would be good? Like, we're there to put our best athletes forward and do that, right? I mean, I was watching some of the Olympic trials over the weekend, watching some of the swimming and track and field, and you earn it, right? I mean, it's this, the top two scores qualify, these things, whatever. Well, when if we just look at the last several events, most recent form where these players played together, let's just call them the majors from this year, I think we're pretty good. I think that's pretty clear.
I mean, you mentioned, right, Olympic swimming, track and field, gymnastics, right? All of these other sports, traditional Olympic sports, if you will, where we feel like we have a good idea who the best in the world are before these qualifiers even kick off, but we have them anyway. And so you've got to perform in this.
Right.
To make the team. And in some cases you do have like coaches picks and things like that, but I mean, why not? Why not have an Olympic qualifier if I'm, except to argue with myself, if you kind of look back when the Olympics were in Brazil, nobody really wanted to play in the Olympics.
Right. There were people that kind of said, I'm not sure.
Who cares? So, but yeah, I mean, I think this should, if anything, if we're not just going to go by common sense, let's have a qualifier. Screw it. Let's just open it up to everybody voting. I don't care. Maybe John Oliver can get some rando in.
I'm sure we could. I'm sure we could.
Yeah, but bottom line, I don't like it.
Equipment.
I think it's
I want to
crap.
talk about equipment. Tony. Tell me about, let's start with an easier topic. New Fujikura Ventus shafts.
New Ventus old hat.
You got the hat on.
New Ventus old hat.
You got new Ventus old hat.
My old hat, yeah.
What's new? Hit me.
Yeah, I mean, their very simple story is it's like original Ventus except faster. So that's been the story of the Ventus VeloCore Plus. That's the official product name, and I think we're integrating VeloCore Plus into it to differentiate from the made-for stuff that goes into the TaylorMade lineup. So it's a way to kind of clarify things a bit, although I think it would have been clearer if they just had not made for Ventus, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, so as they did with the original Ventus, VeloCore Plus started with blue. A few months later, here we are. We now have red and black, which I think probably the ones that you and I are waiting for, as we both tend to be Ventus black in the driver. You're red in your fairway woods, is that correct?
Yeah, I went with TR red.
Okay, all right.
I
haven't had a ton of luck with red, but I remain like red curious.
red.
So we'll see.
So, all right, help me understand this though, because I want to clarify a couple of things. Number one, within the Ventus family. So last year we went through and added. We were just mentioning the TR designation.
Yeah, 2 years ago I think probably.
Is it 2 years now?
Yeah.
I suppose it is. TR is a slightly different shaft, right?
Yes.
We added some additional material, make kind of the handle section a little bit stiffer. That's why, again, I like the red in my fairway woods, because it's a little stiffer in the handle, so it feels more like a black handle.
Yeah.
But you get more of the launch profile of the red, a little more launch, a little higher spin, a little higher peak height, which for me in my fairway woods is good. VeloCore, this version plus, VeloCore Plus replaces the original Ventus of the same color. So VeloCore Plus Blue replaces The original
Ventus blue.
Ventus
TR remains current. That's a different thing, right?
Yep.
So that's, I mean, and there are obviously Fuji's lineup goes well beyond Ventus, but if you want to say, hey, what is current with the name Ventus in it? It is Ventus TR and Ventus VeloCore Plus.
Yep.
Now that is to say, like, you're probably not going to see an immediate switch. This shaft world is I don't want to say strange, but it's certainly a case of where fitters become comfortable with shafts and profiles and things like that, and so there's no real like pressing need not to fit into those. Like Ventus is still as good as it ever was. So,
but help me understand this then. So if because they're touting it as faster, we talk a little nerd stuff here, getting into the bias layer. When you make a shaft, you have these plies, right? Basically, they're flags and they're carbon fiber. They're the fabric, and you wrap them around.
Just laying layers.
Just laying layers.
One layer at a time.
And some of them you wrap around at a 0 degree axis. Some are at a 180 degree axis, and stuff that you lay across the mandrel diagonally.
You mean 90? 0 and 180 when those
0 and 180. Did I say 90?
No, it should be 90, because if you go, like if
I'm
here, I'm laying it this way, and I go 180.
Exactly. Be like a 360 degree shift in performance or something. That if that was it. But the bias layer, 45 degrees, you're laying it at an angle. How is this shaft? So if I play Ventus Black, or I play Ventus Blue, or why should I look at the Plus version now?
Well, like I said, Fujikura says faster.
What does that mean?
It's curious. More ball speed.
Okay.
Through shaft voodoo of some kind. I don't know. We haven't spent a lot of time with these yet, so I'm not going to weigh in on how true that is in my experience. But it's what I find interesting in all of this, if you really want to get into the nerd stuff, when I look at the EI profiles and the data Fujikura is publishing with original Ventus, if you just went strictly by the tip firmness number, Ventus Black was the firmest, and I was just looking at what's on the Fujikura website right now.
Yeah.
By the numbers, it has the softest actual tip. I think it's probably, in terms of talking the tip section, it's not, and it's still going to be the lowest launching. And so I'm not here to tell you that they've shifted the profiles or anything. Right. I'm just going to say that looking at numbers, it appears like
their numbers. Not our numbers.
Something is just a little bit different in this. And so, if you were kind of between two, for example, and you weren't sure, maybe go back and it might be a clearer picture this time. So again, I don't know necessarily how those static numbers play out in the dynamic world of fitting and what happens when you actually hit a golf ball, but there are definitely some subtle tweaks here, and not just hey, we just stuck plus at the end of VeloCore and you're good to go now, because that extra little bit of ink stiffens things up a little bit and makes it faster, right? It's not what's going on here.
Yeah.
But,
well, once we get these in hand and you and I have a chance to put them through the paces a bit more, we'll be able to provide some additional feedback. But for now, like I said, I'm have been a big fan of Ventus since it came out, since I was able to get fit into it, and kind of no reason to think otherwise. That nothing suggests that it won't be really, really good this time around as well. But we'll follow up. Players Irons, Tony. The test is out, published. It's out there, like I said, for all the players and wannabe players. Let's start big picture, and then we'll get a little bit more granular. So let's just start with overall winners. What did we see? Give me the quick rundown.
Yeah, so number 3. Half-ass drum roll. This is a shocker, but again, and we'll get into why this kind of almost makes sense to me. Ram Axial Forged. So if you're looking for kind of an outside-the-box performer, Ram.
Okay. Ram Axial.
Check your calendars, guys. I know. Welcome back to 1990 something, probably.
Sure.
Number 2, and again, like kind of within this, I think we have a really interesting mix, kind of similarly to what we saw with the driver, and I think maybe that speaks to the methodology, which includes now not just raw data, but really highlighting irons that performed well for the most testers. So that said, number 2, Ping I-230.
Okay.
And then our winner, and again, we'll talk about how we got there, or really where it stood out. But number 1 overall, TaylorMade P7 MC.
P7 MC. See, also in the top 5 there overall, Cobra King Tour and Strixon ZX7 Mark II. So some other names you might recognize.
Yeah, and I mean, as you look kind of even at our scoring system with, you mentioned like Strixon in 5th, and really you can within. I mean, it's so crowded in that middle where there's a lot of overlap, a lot of similarity, and we'll talk about it more. But it almost comes down to like, what do you want aesthetically? And I wouldn't say that in most categories.
No,
but then it's like, okay, where do you need a little bit of help from a category that isn't really designed to give you a little bit of help?
There you go. So let's go to this part, which is 2 questions. First one is, how do we score this particular test? So we talk about, again, our metrics, our primary criteria, right, of accuracy, distance, and forgiveness. How do we rank those, and how do we weight those categories for this?
Yeah. Test? So refresher, those are the 3 things, right? Distance, forgiveness, and accuracy that we look at in every iron test, and then depending on the category, and with that, what I would call the expectation for the category, we adjust the weighting. So as you would expect, distance is far more important in a player's distance iron than it is in a player's iron. So here we're 60% accuracy and then 20% each for forgiveness and distance.
Okay. All right. So going, hey, because we're thinking about, right, the prototypical player that might be looking in this particular, and they're saying, yes, you need distance, you need forgiveness, right? I mean, we're saying, but effectively, this player probably cares a tremendous amount about accuracy.
Yeah, right? This is the category where we skew most heavily towards, you want to call it accuracy, precision, but just.
So, run me through the top 5 there. So when I'm looking at the top 5 for just the accuracy component, so again, this is 60% of the overall test. Not surprisingly, our overall winner, TaylorMade P7MC, was also by a landslide in this category. Really, I mean, as far as in so much as there is a landslide in a category.
Yeah. So really, and again, we'll dig into this a little bit, but it's just, and the idea of different players wanting or needing a little help in different spots in the bag, and this one was so strong in the 7-iron and pitching wedge. Just kind of really stood out in with those 2 of the 3 we tested. Ping again second. Conversely, the real strength of the Ping, and I guess this probably isn't a huge surprise, but it did really well in the long irons, where I think even many better players need a little more forgiveness, and so I think that's at least in part where that comes from. And then once you get from those 2, it starts to get really, really crowded. So if you're just looking at the accuracy list, I think by the numbers, our 3rd place finisher was like let me see how far down that was for accuracy. Number 12 for accuracy, but I mean, statistically speaking, there's minimal difference from basically number 5 and arguably even number 3 to that 12, 13 position and beyond. Yeah. So, and I'll hammer this home time and time again. This is of probably every category we test, this is the one where we see the least differentiation between products.
Why is that, do you think? I mean, I think there's an obvious answer and maybe a not so obvious answer, but...
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it being relatively low tech. Right? This isn't player's distance. It's not even, player's cavity back where you're, or kind of those smaller player's distance that kind of resemble player's cavity backs. Like these are, I don't want to say no tech, but these are low tech irons. And so a lot of the difference comes from shaping. And all right, what do we do with the offset that is not necessarily right, but lands on what we're trying to achieve within this category. And so it's little design tweaks versus, massive amount of tungsten and high speed faces with rebound and all of this other stuff. It's subtle differences, and subtle differences make for subtle differences in the results.
Yeah, and when we're talking low technology, we're not suggesting that it's no technology or that it's somehow inferior technology. It's just, think about like your typical game improvement iron, which again tend to be the bulk sellers, right, in the industry, because most golfers are by definition average. Most golfers by definition probably fit into a game improvement style of iron, and so they're thinking about things like, hey, how do we boost ball speed, launch, forgiveness? Think through like I said, like the ping like 500 series. We start to look into, I mean, now it's 530, I know, but like in that 500 series range, we're talking more face technology, trying to figure out, okay, how do we do variable face thickness things maybe, or do we just do thinner faces? Do we put goo inside? Do we not put goo inside? What do we do? How do we get those to then feel a certain way? Blah, blah. We're not talking about any of that stuff.
No.
Right? We're not.
A little bit of tungsten here and there, but not, you're not necessarily trying to drive the center of gravity low and deep and create high launch and lower spin, and again, more speed through a flexible face and, better feel through goo. It's just, these are relatively simple designs. Mm-hmm. They're designed to, it's about as simple as an iron gets, short of a blade. So we would expect the similarities.
Yeah. When you kind of see these results here, anything kind of jump out to you in terms of, like you said, of all the categories we test, this is one where, from top to bottom, or certainly different metrics, I guess if I'm looking in this category, and this is probably my category of irons, and I'm looking through here, can I look at this and go, all right, I get that it's weighted more towards accuracy, that makes sense, but I really like that, but I want something that places more of a premium on distance. I'm good, the forgiveness part, accuracy, okay, but if I were to rank order these, and I'm not saying that this is what I would do personally, but let's say I did. Let's say for me, my criteria went distance, forgiveness, and then accuracy.
Yeah, so if you're looking at distance alone, and we do, right? We kind of say, even in this category, there is a guy who wants that small, simple iron, but he still wants it to go as long as possible. So we look at distance. It's still a small part of the score. Mm-hmm. So, but we do, for our distance scoring, we only look at the 5 and 7 iron. We don't we're not trying to.
Wedge is hot.
And you do get hot pitching wedges from time to time, sure. But just looking at numbers, like the Apex, I would say the Apex Pro, which is arguably right on the edge of this category. Right, that's has a little bit of speed built in, and that comes through. Right, it's designed so that's, if you're looking for distance from a kind of a more compact shaped, Apex Pro stands out. Again, the RAM, and the other one that I would bring up there. And although the RAM is curious, because that's one where the pitching wedge was a little bit longer, so it doesn't really come through in this parts. But the other one, the Mizuno Pro 243, was really long. So yeah, but again, like just looking at the numbers, the Apex, especially if you're looking at just that long iron, Apex Pro, 60% of our test pool, so 60% of 20 golfers had it in their top 3 for distance. So that's pretty. We can be confident that's going to be a long for a lot of guys.
Yeah, just looking over, the different categories, and like you said, we can break them apart here by, 5 iron performance, 7 iron, wedge, etc. In category, again, you see, Mizuno pop up there quite a bit. JPX 923, and you just mentioned Mizuno Pro 243. We see in there a fair bit. Callaway, Apex, both Apex Pro and Apex CB we're seeing up there, and that particular family's a little long in the tooth. So I'll be interested to see if we, maybe, and of course, now P7MC wins, and we've seen, Michael Block had them in the Protos. I think Nelly was rumored to be using some of whatever. We saw the long iron replacement. I think Rory had in earlier this season, right? Which kind of looks and feels like a P7MC replacement potentially. But last time when P7MCs launched and we were out with TaylorMade, again, they were really high on their iron stuff. You and I were both impressed with kind of what we saw and heard. And it was like, okay, this could be an interesting thing. Let's see how it plays out down the road. Let's see if what TaylorMade is telling us is actually true. And it kind of seems like it is.
It's good. I mean, the P Series has been, it doesn't win every year by any stretch of the imagination, but just kind of, if you were going to say, hey, top to bottom, it's arguably the most impressive iron lineup on the market right now because it spans almost everything. Doesn't really quite get into super game improvement, but with the stealth lineup, they've pretty much got that covered. So,
yeah, you can make a pretty good argument that if we stacked every company
QI now. So
yeah, it's but it's also a great time if you are, like I said, looking at this category, players, irons, and so number one, right now it's a great time to be looking at those. Like I said, the overall the quality of what we saw was super high, but we're also starting to see, like you said, some of this blurring between categories. So when we say that, what do we mean? What does that actually indicate?
And you have within, right, there's always a line between players and, say, players distance and players and game improvement, players distance and game improvement, super game improvement, right? Like, where do you draw that line? And, manufacturers will often draw those lines themselves, draw them for you and say, hey, this is our game improvement iron. And you kind of look at it and go, but is it really? Does it really fit in that category? And talk game improvement in particular kind of being the wild, wild west where it's become the, if it's not this and it's not that, then it has to be game improvement, right? We don't. It's not players distance. It's not super game improvement. It's the category where you almost get to nowadays by process of elimination. I think that's probably slowly changing, and you're going to see, as I've described, like true game improvement is going to, I think, going to make a real comeback, and then you'll have I don't know what we'll call it, but something the equivalent of hacker's distance, right? Like this idea of like this, it's like player's distance, but bigger and more forgiving, right? It's game improvement that leans heavily towards the distance end of that equation. So
yeah.
But it is tough, and so with Most Wanted, a lot of times you're like, all right, where do you think it fits?
Right.
And unless you
got to put it somewhere,
right? Unless it's absolutely absurd, we kind of put it where they tell us to.
Yeah,
and I know we'll hear like, oh well, of course it's longer, the lofts are X, and the shaft length is Y, and all that stuff. But I'm going to tell you, the average guy when he goes into a hitting bay, he's not asking why it went longer. No. He's going to take
what was the CG depth on this one again, sir? What was the... Yeah, they're not asking.
I get it. It is frustrating when there's not... I also say it's unrealistic to expect everybody's going to agree on, all right, yes, all 7 irons will now be...
32 degrees or whatever.
Pick a number, right? Everybody's 7 irons has to be to this spec, and obviously we've talked before about how that doesn't work with CG positions on dynamic loft and how it's just a freaking number, and ultimately it doesn't mean everything when you actually hit the club, but I get it. We're just out here trying to put things where they go, and
and as a frame of
hit them all.
It's a place to start every conversation, and then you can get more nuanced and detailed as we go. One of the things I'm going to be interested to watch in this category too, and it was the Cobra 3D printed irons that made me kind of want to revisit this too, is irons that are able to kind of leap categories, not just blur the lines between the two and
transcend.
So can we really get a, like we saw the King Tour, obviously the Cobra's irons, profile wise, sit in between the King Tour and their CB, but so they look like this, but perform like a category higher, meaning in terms of ball speed, launch forgiveness, maybe they look here, but they perform one step over here, right? So are we going to see more of that anywhere where it's like, hey, this looks like a player's iron, but maybe it performs more like a player's distance, or a player's distance iron that looks player's distance, but man, this thing plays like a game improvement. Is it gonna?
That's the holy grail, right? And so we'll see. We'll see what comes next. I think between what Cobra's doing, chatter that Bryson's company, Avoda or whatever it is they're gonna do they're gonna do a commercial release as well, maybe. So
with bulge and roll on the face.
It's with roll.
Topic
right?
for a different day.
Yeah, like guys, you don't need it. Bryson may need it. You don't need it.
Yeah.
It's a speed.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
fine.
about it. All right, last question, Tony. This week we are headed out to Titleist. We're going to go see some of the new stuff out there, specifically new metalwoods. One
generational technology.
Is that what it stands for? Give me one thing you're looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to seeing TPI. I'm looking forward to hitting the clubs, but I think, as we've been out the last 2 or 3 times and seeing the renovation almost step by step to an extent, and I expect most people don't know this, but TPI is Titleist Performance Institute. They're primarily their fitting center. But they're also adding like a university component, an educational center.
Yep.
And the crazy thing, so a few things of note, taking Aaron Dill and stuffing him in a back corner and giving him his own little wedge space. And then I believe they've kind of integrated now what I want to say is a 3-hole golf course. Is that correct?
Yep.
So a 3-hole golf course designed by, do you know the answer to this?
Gil Hance, I thought.
No. David McClay Kidd.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
that's awesome.
So the guy who designed the first course at Bandon Dunes, the Bandon Dunes course, has actually redesigned the 3-hole course at Titleist Performance Institute as well. Okay. So absolutely fascinating to kind of see what that looks like and to potentially even go out there and do a loop when we're done with the fitting process. So I know Titleist is super proud of it. I think we're going to be recording a podcast. They actually want us out on grass so that everybody can see what they've done.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm excited to check that out and see, because it's gone from, what I would say is a perfectly wonderful facility, right? Like we enjoyed it. Great place to hit balls, to being out there for TSR 1 launch and quite literally hitting at a bulldozer in front of a mound of dirt.
Almost hit one of those guys. That was fun. Yeah.
Right. To now what is closer to being kind of the completed, or at least the grass portion of it. We'll see. I think, maybe not this time, but the time after that we go out again, it'll be complete. But it's just a kind of a really, really cool facility.
Yeah. I'm excited for everything out there. I love going out there to see. I'm going to be particularly interested to see what the fairway woods configurations, models, and offerings at those lofts. We had the article, I think you wrote that article, the one last week, TaylorMade tour stuff, but basically it was discrete lofts and models, and a 6-wood, a 4-wood. This year we've seen the advancement of kind of the 7-wood category. I'll use the Callaway AI Smoke as an example, with the triple diamond version being in a 7-wood. I'm going to be interested to see kind of what menu Titleist has come up with this time around for that metal wood, the fairway wood portion of the experience. So who knows? We'll see. We'll have plenty to talk about when we can talk about it, but we'll give you our feedback. As always, people, follow us on the interwebs. You have questions. Maybe Tony will be in a lab golf putter by the next time you talk to us. We don't know. But until next time, we out.